Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more turkey patterning, and today we've got another new combo that we haven't tried with a new choke that we haven't tested on the channel yet either. And since getting some of these shells that we're going to run today, this has pretty much been one of the top requested choke combos to try them through. So I'm definitely looking forward to see what kind of performance we can get because it should be pretty devastating. So as for the shells I brought out here today, I got out some more of these, the Winchester Longbeard TSS shells. These ones are the 12 gauge, 3 inch, 2 3/8 ounce payload of TSS 9s, moving about 1100 feet per second. And these Longbeard TSS shells have definitely been some devastating performers so far. They've thrown some fantastic looking patterns, but they aren't cheap. A box of 5 rounds of these is going from anywhere between $70 to $85 right now, depending on where you get it from. I'm hoping that price will come down a little bit since the Longbeard TSS 20 gauge stuff has kind of started to come down from some people. So maybe we might get lucky and see these in the $55 to $60 range, but for now, you're looking at $14, $15 a round. So they better give us some good performance through today's choke because it's a relatively expensive combination of stuff. And as for today's setup, we're going to run those through. I brought out the Remington 1187 here with this new choke, which is an Indian Creek 665 constriction turkey choke. I quite honestly don't know how I didn't have a Rem choke thread Indian Creek yet on the channel, but now we've got one, and I actually have two. I've got a 670 Indian Creek as well that we'll be testing at some point, but everybody wanted to see the 1187, an Indian Creek 665, and these Longbeard TSS 9s. So we know Indian Creek tends to make some pretty good chokes, and we know those Longbeard TSS shells pattern good through this 1187, so we'll see what the combination of all three can give us, because it should be pretty devastating. But as for today's test, everything is the same as usual. I've got the turkey target at 40 yards, and I've got the chronograph so we can get our velocity from the shells. So let's get you guys a view of that target and see what we can get from the Longbeard TSS 9s through this Indian Creek 665. I've got some pretty high hopes for it, so let's take our shot and see what kind of pattern we can get. Alright, so that shell gave us 1134 through the chrono. The boss claim is 1100. So we saw just a little bit more than what they were saying we should, but that has been the norm for these shells every time we've tested them so far, is low to mid 1100 range generally. So definitely nothing out of the ordinary from that 28-inch barrel on that 1187. But what kind of a pattern did they give us through that Indian Creek 665 down there at 40? Let's go check it out and see what we got. All right, now we're down here at our 40-yard paper, and I gotta say, that is absolutely devastating. We might have been just a touch off to the left, but that is a new choke, and it may very well just pattern a touch off to the left out of that particular shotgun with those particular shells, but that's why you always test your setup before you take it out on a hunt to see where it hits. Either way, still a very dead turkey at 40 yards. That core there is absolutely nasty, and to be honest with you, the Birchwood KC didn't even really perform all that great either. I kind of had to brush my hand across it to knock some of the paint off of it because a lot of these new Birchwood KCs still kind of suck. Either way, absolute devastation inside of that 10-inch circle type of area there in the core. You might have one little void right above the back of his neck right there, but still that is absolutely nothing to be worried about. Outside of that, on the very outskirt edges, we might have a couple little stragglers of stuff, maybe a flyer or two down there at the bottom, and maybe one up here at the very top right corner, but still definitely nothing detrimental to the pattern whatsoever. I'd say easily 90% of your load is within about a 12-inch circle there. So yeah, that is absolutely devastating at 40 yards. There's no other way to put it. And with a pattern like that, you're going to be able to get every bit of range that you can physically get out of a TSS 9. 45 yards, definitely doable. 50 yards, yeah, absolutely. You would have the pattern for it. You would start to run out of energy with a TSS 9 before you'd run out of pattern with that kind of performance. So I think it pretty well speaks for itself. If we had that pattern up there on his head, he may very well not have a head left at 40 yards. So I guess that's kind of to be expected out of a $70 to $80 box of shells and an $80 to $100 choke. This is not a very cheap combination of stuff, so it better perform pretty outstanding. And yeah, I'd say that that's a pretty nasty pattern right there. Now still, if I was just the casual turkey hunter, I don't know that I would spend spend that much extra money on this kind of combination, yeah, it would give me some absolutely incredible results, but that's not a cheap pill to swallow, especially when a regular lead Longbeard load and a $25 tightwad choke can give me a very similar pattern. And at 40 yards, a dead turkey's a dead turkey. So yeah, I think that pattern pretty well speaks for itself, and I'd say we found a pretty good combination here. And it kind of seems like between 660 and 665 is the constriction where these Longbeard TSS shells really like to live. So definitely not a disappointment from today's combination at all, because that is very impressive. And here's the wad from that shell. Very typical Winchester / Herders TSS wad type stuff. I think it's probably the same as stuff that Winchester puts in the Herders TSS shells. You can see there is a little bit of scraping and damage and stuff. There might be one or two tiny little pinholes up here, but none of that is uncommon at all for going through an Indian Creek choke. There's nothing stuck down in there and no major damage though. So for 2 3/8 ounce worth of payload going through an Indian Creek choke, this wad looks very much normal. Definitely nothing at all I'm concerned with. And clearly, I think it did its job for today with that devastating of a pattern. So, no concerns from me here on the wad. Alright y'all, well, what did you think about that performance right there? That's nothing short of devastation. And if we centered that up just a little bit there, that turkey may very well not have a head left at 40 yards. So once again, that's a 40+ yard type of pattern. It's one that you would run out of energy with a TSS 9 before you would run out of pattern capability. Because pattern-wise, you could easily push that to 60 yards, and I bet it would probably still hold up, but it just becomes a case of how much energy do you want to take the chance of out at those longer ranges like that. Plus, I'm not the guy that takes 60-yard shots on a turkey anyway, and a lot of people aren't, but that would be an absolutely devastating pattern at 40 yards, and I'd hate to see what it looks like at like 15 or 20 yards, because that would be a straight up like baseball type of pattern, I have no doubt. So yeah, pretty devastating combination, and I'd say for the first test we've done with that Indian Creek 665, it looks to be a pretty devastating choke as well. So I guess leave your thoughts about it down in the comments. Is that about what you expected? Were you surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of these new Winchester Longbeard TSS shells yet? And if so, what kind of results have you seen from them? And what kind of results have you seen from an Indian Creek 665 if you've tested one of them? And what other combos of shell and choke do you want to see with either those Longbeard TSS or that Indian Creek 665? Let me know all that down below. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.